Padre Pio, one of the most revered and mysterious saints of the Catholic Church, lived a life so deeply immersed in the supernatural that even decades after his death, people continue to reflect on the depth of his spiritual vision. Known for his intense prayer life, miraculous healings, the visible wounds of the stigmata, and frequent encounters with angels, Padre Pio was not a saint who lived faith only in words. He lived it in suffering, obedience, silence, and action. Those who knew him described him as someone who seemed to live simultaneously in two worlds, the physical world we see and touch, and the spiritual world that remains hidden to most. He spoke often about angels, demons, spiritual warfare, and the subtle ways God communicates with humanity. Yet among all his teachings, one subject continues to surprise and even confuse many people: his reflections on animals, particularly cats, and their role within the spiritual order of creation. To Padre Pio, animals were not spiritually neutral or insignificant. They were part of God's design, capable of serving purposes far greater than companionship alone. He believed that creation itself participates in God's protective care for humanity, and animals, being innocent and unburdened by sin, could sometimes act as quiet instruments of divine will. Cats, with their silent movements, watchful presence, and mysterious sensitivity, stood out in his reflections. While many people see cats simply as independent, curious, or affectionate creatures, Padre Pio believed their presence could sometimes carry a deeper meaning. He taught that nothing in life happens by accident, and this included the animals that cross our paths or choose to remain near us. In his understanding, God's protection rarely arrives in dramatic or obvious ways. Angels do not always appear as radiant beings with wings, nor do divine messages always come through thunderous voices or miraculous signs. More often, Padre Pio explained, God works quietly, gently, through ordinary realities that require spiritual awareness to recognize.
Animals, especially cats, could be part of this hidden language of God. Cats are known for perceiving what humans cannot: subtle sounds, unseen movements, changes in atmosphere, emotional shifts within a home.
Padre Pio believed this heightened sensitivity made them especially receptive to spiritual realities.
He suggested that angels,
who operate invisibly and subtly, could use such creatures as instruments of protection, warning, or comfort. A cat lingering near a person who is suffering, appearing unexpectedly during moments of fear or loneliness, or persistently returning to a particular place was not, in his view, something to dismiss lightly. He encouraged the faithful to observe such moments with humility rather than skepticism. To him, these were possible signs that heaven was near, quietly watching over God's children. Padre Pio often reminded people that angels are deeply involved in human lives, assigned by God to protect, guide, and defend souls, especially during times of spiritual struggle. If angels could influence thoughts, circumstances, and encounters, why could they not also work through animals, creatures already attuned to what lies beyond human perception? He believed that when a cat appeared, at a moment of emotional distress, fear, or confusion, it could be a gentle reminder that one was not alone, that divine protection was present even if unseen. Such experiences were not meant to replace faith or prayer, but to strengthen trust in God's nearness. For Padre Pio, recognizing these signs required a heart that was spiritually awake, not obsessed with superstition, but open to the mystery of God's ways. He cautioned against exaggeration or idolization of animals, yet he firmly rejected the idea that they were spiritually irrelevant. In his worldview, all of creation praises God and participates, in its own way, in the divine plan. Cats, silent and observant, cool, these serve as living reminders of the invisible world that surrounds us constantly, even when we are unaware of it. This understanding of animals as participants in God's order aligns deeply with the broader Christian mystical tradition that Padre Pio embodied. He often emphasized that God uses humble instruments to accomplish his will, choosing what seems small or insignificant in the eyes of the world to reveal his power. Animals, incapable of deceit or pride, exist entirely within God's design,
obeying instincts placed in them by the Creator.
Padre Pio believed that
This purity made them especially suitable as tools of comfort and protection. He saw animals not as moral agents like humans, but as vessels through which God's care could be expressed in tangible ways.
Cats, in particular, fascinated him because of their quiet presence and ability to remain near suffering souls without demanding attention. Many people who came to Padre Pio shared stories of animals appearing during moments of grief, illness, or spiritual despair,
and he listened to these accounts with seriousness rather than dismissal. He reminded them that God often sends help before we even know how to ask for it. In moments when prayer feels dry, when faith feels weak, or when loneliness becomes overwhelming, the arrival of an animal's comforting presence could be one of the many small graces God allows to sustain the soul. Padre Pio's teachings echo those of earlier saints, such as Saint Francis of Assisi,
who saw animals as brothers and sisters within creation, praising God simply by being what they were created to be. Like Saint Francis, Padre Pio believed that respecting animals was part of respecting God's work. But Padre Pio went further in emphasizing their possible role in spiritual protection, especially in a world he believed was constantly engaged in unseen spiritual conflict. He spoke openly about demonic activity, temptation, and spiritual danger, insisting that angels were equally active in defending souls. In this context, animals could serve as silent guardians, unsettling negative spiritual influences, or drawing a person's attention away from despair and toward peace. He encouraged people to remain attentive, not fearful, when animals behaved in unusual but gentle ways, especially during times of prayer or suffering. For those who live with animals, Padre Pio's reflections invite a deeper awareness of gratitude and responsibility. Animals are not lucky charms or mystical objects, but gifts of God's creation entrusted to human care. Their presence should inspire humility rather than control, awareness rather than superstition. Padre Pio believed that when a person forms a genuine bond with an animal, rooted in kindness and respect, that relationship can become a channel through which God's tenderness is experienced. A cat resting beside someone overwhelmed by anxiety or quietly watching during moments of illness may be offering more than warmth. It may be participating in God's quiet ministry of consolation. Padre Pio's message ultimately calls people to widen their understanding of how God works in the world. Divine love is not limited to churches, sacraments, or extraordinary miracles, though those are sacred and essential. It also flows through the ordinary, the familiar, and the seemingly simple. The spiritual realm, as Padre Pio taught, is never far away. It surrounds human life constantly, intersecting with it in ways that often go unnoticed. Animals, especially cats with their mysterious stillness and alert presence, can become gentle reminders of that unseen closeness. Whether one fully accepts Padre Pio's interpretations or not, his teachings challenge believers to live with greater attentiveness, reverence, and trust. They remind us that God's protection is not always loud or dramatic, but often quiet, subtle, and deeply personal, revealed through the creatures and moments placed in our lives exactly when we need them most. Padre Pio's message about animals, and especially about cats, opens a doorway into a deeper awareness of how closely the spiritual and physical worlds are intertwined. He invited people to look beyond appearances and to question the idea that reality is limited to what can be seen, measured, or explained. In his understanding, the behavior of animals often reflects movements within the unseen realm. Cats, in particular, fascinated him because of their quiet vigilance and their ability to sense what lies beneath the surface of human emotion. They appear calm, observant, and detached, yet at the same time deeply attentive. This dual nature made Padre Pio reflect on how cats seem to exist between two realities, fully present in the physical world while remaining sensitive to subtle energies that humans often overlook. Their independence is not a sign of distance, but of awareness, as if they are always listening to something beyond ordinary sound. Padre Pio believed that this sensitivity allowed cats to respond instinctively to spiritual disturbances, emotional wounds, or moments of vulnerability. When a cat approaches a person who is grieving, anxious, or spiritually exhausted, it does not attempt to fix the problem or demand attention. It simply remains nearby, offering silent companionship. For Padre Pio, this silence carried meaning. He taught that silence is one of the primary languages of God, a space where grace moves gently and where the soul can breathe again. His own life was marked by long periods of silence, during which he endured suffering, engaged in spiritual battles, and received divine insight. In that same way, the silent presence of a cat could be understood as a form of spiritual consolation, an invitation to slow down, to breathe, and to remember that one is not abandoned. Padre Pio believed that angels often work through peace rather than noise, through presence rather than spectacle. A cat settling near someone in distress could therefore be more than instinct. It could be a quiet reassurance that divine protection is active even when unseen. He encouraged people not to become obsessed with interpreting signs, but to remain open and grateful, recognizing that God's care often arrives through the simplest and most unexpected channels. In moments when prayer feels heavy or words fail, the quiet closeness of an animal can gently restore a sense of safety, reminding the soul that it is still held within God's loving attention. Padre Pio also emphasized that this spiritual sensitivity is not limited to cats alone, but cats serve as a particularly striking example because of how naturally they respond to emotional and spiritual shifts. He believed angels could move through the natural world in ways that do not violate human freedom or overwhelm the senses. Rather than appearing visibly, angels often influence circumstances, encounters, and even the behavior of living creatures. Animals untouched by human pride or calculation can respond more freely to these influences. From this perspective, a cat that suddenly enters someone's life, chooses a particular person, or consistently stays close during difficult times may be participating in a form of hidden guidance. Padre Pio taught that recognizing such moments requires discernment, prayer, and humility. He warned against superstition, but he also warned against spiritual blindness. To dismiss everything as coincidence is, in his view, to ignore the subtle ways God speaks through creation. Applying this teaching in daily life does not mean assigning meaning to every animal encounter, but it does mean living with greater attentiveness. When an animal appears during a moment of inner struggle, it can serve as an invitation to pause and reflect on what the soul may need. Padre Pio encouraged people to respond not with curiosity alone, but with prayer, gratitude, and trust. He believed animals could help draw the human heart back into the present moment, where God is always waiting. Their simplicity teaches patience, their attentiveness teaches awareness, and their loyalty reflects a kind of faithfulness that humans often forget. Ultimately, Padre Pio's insights challenge people to expand their understanding of divine care. God's protection does not always come through dramatic interventions or visible miracles. Often, it is woven quietly into daily life through companions who do not speak but remain, who do not explain but comfort. In this way, animals become gentle reminders that the spiritual realm is not distant or unreachable, but close, active, and deeply involved in human life. Padre Pio's own experiences with angels, spiritual warfare, and souls beyond this world shaped his conviction that nothing in creation is meaningless. Every creature has a place, and sometimes the smallest presence carries the greatest reassurance, gently pointing the soul back toward trust, peace, and the unseen love that surrounds it at every moment. What truly set Padre Pio apart from so many others who spoke about faith was not only the depth of his mystical experiences, but his unwavering conviction that these encounters were never meant to remain distant or reserved for saints alone. He believed they carried meaning, guidance, and comfort for ordinary people living ordinary lives. Padre Pio saw the world as a deeply interconnected spiritual ecosystem, where nothing existed in isolation and nothing was without purpose. In his understanding, God's design extended far beyond human concerns and included every living creature, from the smallest insect hidden in the soil to the largest animals that walk the earth. He rejected the idea that animals were spiritually insignificant or merely background elements in creation. Instead, he believed they were woven into the same divine tapestry as humanity, each fulfilling a role that served God's greater plan. For Padre Pio, the presence of animals in our lives was never accidental, never trivial, and never meaningless. They were, in their own quiet way, participants in the spiritual forces that work constantly to protect us, guide us, and gently draw our hearts closer to God. When he spoke about animals, especially cats, he did so with a seriousness that challenged people to reconsider their assumptions. He invited them to reflect on their own experiences, to recall moments when an animal seemed to appear at exactly the right time, offering comfort without words. Many people can remember a cat that curled up beside them during grief, a dog that refused to leave their side during illness, or a bird that appeared unexpectedly during a moment of prayer or reflection. These experiences are often dismissed as coincidence or sentimentality, but Padre Pio encouraged people to look deeper. Through the lens of his spiritual insight, such moments took on a new dimension. He believed animals could be instruments of divine protection, acting according to God's will without awareness or intention of their own, yet fulfilling a sacred role nonetheless. In this way, animals could become gentle reminders that we are never abandoned, even when we feel isolated or forgotten. Padre Pio taught that God's care is often expressed through simplicity rather than spectacle. While miracles and visions capture attention, it is often the quiet presence of a living creature, that brings the most immediate comfort to a wounded soul. Beyond comfort, Padre Pio believed animals could help shape the spiritual growth of those who paid attention. He often spoke about how animals embody qualities that humans struggle to cultivate: patience, attentiveness, humility, and presence. A cat, for example, moves through the world without haste, observing rather than reacting, resting without guilt and responding only when necessary.
In the midst of chaos, a cat remains composed, grounded, and alert.
Padre Pio saw this as a living lesson for the human soul, especially during times of spiritual struggle.
To sit quietly,
Why, in the presence of an animal, is to be invited into stillness, to step out of constant worry and into awareness of the present moment. This awareness, he taught, is essential for spiritual growth, because God is encountered not in distraction but in attentiveness. Padre Pio's own life was a testament to the power of silence. Silence was not emptiness for him, but fullness, a sacred space where God could speak without interruption. He believed animals, especially cats, could help lead people into this sacred silence. Their calm presence, steady breathing, and quiet watchfulness naturally slow the human mind, encouraging reflection and prayer without forcing it. In this sense, animals could become spiritual companions, not replacing prayer or faith, but supporting them, gently guiding the soul toward deeper awareness of God's nearness. To Padre Pio, this was not romantic imagination but lived reality, shaped by years of intense spiritual experience, suffering, and profound intimacy with the divine. When considering the practical implications of Padre Pio's teachings, it becomes clear that his message was never meant to remain abstract or theoretical. He believed spiritual insight must be lived, applied, and integrated into daily life. Recognizing the spiritual significance of animals begins with mindfulness, the deliberate choice to be present and attentive rather than distracted or dismissive. Padre Pio encouraged people to notice patterns, timing, and inner responses. If a cat appears during a moment of fear, confusion, or sorrow, he would advise against immediately explaining it away. Instead, he would invite reflection. What is happening within your heart at this moment? What burden are you carrying? What decision are you avoiding? In such moments, the animal's presence may serve as an invitation to pause, breathe, and open oneself to divine guidance. Padre Pio believed that God often speaks first through peace rather than answers, through reassurance rather than solutions. Animals can be carriers of that peace, creating space for the soul to regain balance. He also emphasized the importance of how humans treat animals, seeing this as a reflection of their spiritual maturity. To view animals merely as objects, possessions, or conveniences is to miss the deeper bond that can exist between creation and humanity. Padre Pio encouraged respect, kindness, and gratitude toward animals, not because animals replace God, but because honoring creation honors the Creator. By treating animals with compassion, humans align themselves more closely with God's own care for all living things. Prayer, in Padre Pio's teaching, was the key that unlocked deeper understanding. He believed that prayer transforms perception, allowing people to see beyond surface appearances. When encountering an animal that seems to carry emotional or spiritual significance, he encouraged prayer, not analysis alone. A simple prayer of thanks, a quiet request for guidance, or even a moment of silent openness could deepen awareness of God's presence. Through prayer, the heart becomes receptive, capable of discerning whether an experience carries spiritual meaning or simply offers comfort. Padre Pio also stressed openness to the unexpected. Divine intervention rarely conforms to human expectations. Angels do not always appear as radiant beings, and guidance does not always arrive through dramatic signs. Sometimes it comes through a stray cat that chooses your doorstep, a dog that refuses to leave your side, or a bird that appears at a moment of inner questioning. Padre Pio believed that remaining open to these possibilities does not weaken faith but strengthens it, because it acknowledges that God's ways are broader than human imagination. His teachings challenge people to expand their understanding of how divine love operates in the world. Animals, in his view, are not random background elements of life, but active participants in God's ongoing care for humanity. The why can comfort, protect, teach, and gently redirect hearts toward trust and awareness. To live according to Padre Pio's insight is to move through the world with reverence, curiosity, and humility, recognizing that every encounter may carry meaning. When an animal crosses your path, it may simply be a moment of companionship, or it may be something deeper, a quiet reminder that you are seen, protected, and loved. In the world Padre Pio inhabited, there were no meaningless encounters, only invitations to see more clearly. And perhaps, hidden within the eyes of an animal, There is a reflection of the divine care that surrounds us at every moment, waiting to be recognized by a heart willing to look beyond the surface.